VIX V8 Videos, 6 to 12 volt conversions, is being brought to you by Ace Auto Parts. Since 1923, hundreds of thousands of customers have come to rely on Ace as a company they can trust. By Patrick's Antique Cars and Trucks, home of classic Fenton cast iron headers and Patrick's Mallory distributors for early flathead V8 Fords. And by Norman's Classic Auto Radio for the best in repairs. FM stereo conversions and cassette radios designed to fit and fill original dashboard openings.
How many times has this happened to you? You're all ready to take your car to a car show or a cruise in, or just for a quick spin around the block. Hop in, turn the key, hit the starter, and she won't fire. I'm Vic Piano from VIX V8 Videos, and that's a problem I've been having with my 47 Ford ever since El Nino came on the scene here in Central Florida. We had so much rain this past winter that my car would hardly ever start, and I was really getting tired of it. So I decided it's time for a change. I want 12 volts in my car. Problem is, I never liked the way an alternator looked sitting on top of a flathead. I know plenty of guys that run flat motors and street rods with alternators because they've also got power windows or air conditioning or a Mega Blaster stereo system in their car. But my car's a retro car. I don't have any of that stuff. I don't want any of that stuff in my car. I want it to look as original as it possibly can under the hood. And so I wanted something that looked like my original 6-volt generator. I talked to Hank Young at Joe Smith Automotive, and Hank told me, Vic, I make a 12-volt generator that fits inside the original housing. So I said, Hank, send one down to me so I can put it in my car. I also talked to Dave Tatum at Tatum Engineering out on the West Coast. Dave told me he makes an alternator that fits inside the original housings. So you have your choice. If you want to stay retro, you can go with a generator that's 12 volt, or you can even put an alternator that's 12 volt that looks just like your original 6-volt generator in the car. Now, if I can get my Ford started, I plan on converting it to from 6 volts to 12 volts today with Al Capabianco over at Classic Corvettes and Collectibles. But he's about 10 miles from here, and I hope I don't have to push it. Ow! Ow! I finally made it. I got the car here ready to convert to 12 volts.
Tired of pushing? Hey, Vic, I think you need a hand now, buddy. It's 12 volt time. Huh? And while we're doing that, we got another surprise for you. We're going to put in the Patrick's Mallory electronic ignition system.
Well, Al, now that we're inside the heat of the shop as opposed to the heat of the parking lot, and I was able to push my Ford over here, I'm ready for that 12-volt change. What exactly am I going to need to change everything over to 12 volts?
All right, first thing you're going to need, Vic, you're going to need a generator, which is right here. It's a 12-volt generator, which looks identical and mounts identical to the 6-volt generator. Second, you're going to need a 12-volt voltage regulator. And from that, you need a ballast resistor, 12-volt ballast resistor. And, of course, all your light bulbs. We must change all the light bulbs. And since we put an electronic ignition in, okay, of course, that runs on 12 volts, so we wire it exactly the way they have it in the diagram in your 12-volt wiring schematic. And a special Mallory coil, which comes with the electronic ignition.
Well, for once we've got all the parts I need to make this conversion, what do you say we go get the car and push it in here and get started?
The last time we're pushing it.
I hope you're right, Al. Okay, we've talked about the 12-volt conversion using a generator. Now we'll go over the process installing an alternator. My good friend Tony DaCosta of Hot Rod and Custom Supply in Cape Coral, Florida, provided us with the following information for installing an alternator. We know that traditional style rods, customs, and restorations all have specialized electrical requirements. Converting to 12 volts using original gauges and modern accessories all require special attention. The first thing you'll need is a quality 12-volt negative ground alternator. One of the main reasons auto manufacturers switched from generators to alternators was because of an alternator's ability to put out a high amperage at low RPM. Hot Rod and Custom Supply uses a one-wire style alternator in their conversions. The one-wire is the easiest to wire into your system. By going to an internal regulator alternator such as this, you can eliminate the expense and extra wiring involved in using an external mount voltage regulator. If you are going with an alternator, this polished cast aluminum slingshot alternator bracket is the perfect way to mount a GM alternator to your 32 to 53 intake manifold. You'll also need instrument and accessory voltage drop units to use your original gauges and accessories like the 6-volt heater blower motor. The voltage drop on the left is for gauges, and only one is required. An interesting footnote: Ford used 6-volt gauges up into the 1970s with a similar voltage drop unit mounted on the back of the dashboard unit. On the right is the accessory voltage drop for use with accessories drawing up to 20 amps. Remember, if you are planning to use your stock 6-volt radio, you must convert it to 12 volts because you cannot reverse the polarity from positive to negative ground. Other components you need to add include a 12-volt ignition resistor. This is especially true if you are keeping your original distributor with points. We'll be installing a Patrick's Mallory electronic ignition and still be using the resistor. You'll also want to replace your 6-volt solenoid with a 12-volt unit and your stock starter button, which is a ground-style unit, with a 12-volt button designed to pass current through to energize the solenoid. Now, let's go back to the mounting brackets for the alternator. If you're running a stock single carburetor, the slingshot will work just fine for you. However, if you are running 2 or 3 carbs on your 49 through 53 motor, you'll need an offset bracket such as the one shown here. Now for the ultimate in cool: air conditioning for the flathead. That's right. Hot Rod and Custom Supply makes a bracket for mounting a 508 compressor and an alternator to your favorite flat motor. They can also provide the most complete air conditioning kits in the industry for Ford and Mercury cars powered by flathead V8s. The folks at Hot Rod and Custom Supply can be reached by calling area code 941-574-7744. For this part of the video instructing you on how to change from 6 to 12 volts, I've decided that it's easier to try and demonstrate it on the poster board than try and get the camera up underneath the dashboard. Now, if you have a Ford like I do, all your gauges are operated electronically. If you have another brand, GM, Chrysler, whatever, a lot of those cars use mechanical gauges, and so you don't need to put an inverter. However, if you want to use your original Ford gauges on your new 12-volt negative ground system, you have to install an inverter. You can do one single inverter, or you can do inverters for each individual gauge. For this conversion, we've selected one converter made by Ron Francis Wireworks. Now, the converter should be mounted underneath the dashboard as close to the gauges as you can possibly get it, making sure that it's in a position that will be well ventilated because you don't want to run the risk of overheating it. Now, once you've positioned your inverter under the hood, there are 3 leads coming out of the inverter. One is a ground lead, one is a 12-volt lead, and one is a 6-volt lead. Now what you do is, on the back of your instrument cluster, you'll see your fuel gauge, your oil pressure gauge, your battery gauge, and your temperature gauge. The temperature, oil pressure, and fuel all come into one line that's fed off of the ignition switch. Now the back of the ignition switch on the 47 Ford has 3 terminals. You need to determine which terminal is feeding your instruments. That's relatively easy to do. Just turn the car on with your 6-volt system intact, check through each individual wire, and see what happens on your dashboard, okay? Once you've determined the wire that handles your dashboard instrument gauges, cut that wire about 1 inch or 2 away from the ignition switch. Take the inverter that you've already grounded to a good solid ground underneath the dashboard, take the 12-volt lead, which is clearly marked, run it to the ignition side of the wire going to the gauges. Then take the 6-volt feed and run it to the wire that you cut leading up to the gauges. That's really all there is to it. Now your dashboard gauges will give you a true reading on a 12-volt negative ground, even though they're operating off of their 6-volt sending units. The only difference that you'll notice is that your battery gauge will now read in reverse. In other words, while the generator is charging, the battery gauge will read discharge, and vice versa. There is a way to correct that, I've been told, although I've never done it myself, but the loop on the back of the battery gauge that the wire crosses through, if you cut that wire and reverse the flow of that wire, theoretically, allegedly, that will correct the problem with the battery gauge, and then it will read correctly with the 12-volt negative ground.
Okay, on our 12-volt conversion, we already mounted our 12-volt regulator. And here's our old distributor. We removed the old distributor. Now we're going to put in the new electronic distributor, Mallory. All right, this distributor is self-contained. There is no black box to it. All you do is hook it up. There's a wiring diagram that comes with it. It's very simple to do. Okay, when you remove your old distributor, take note of what way the rotor is pointing. Okay, really you can't put it in backwards, but just take a note of it. It makes it a little easier. The rear gear, as you see back here, is slotted. It only goes in one way. Cannot get in there back wrong, no matter how big your hammer is. With this Patrick Mallory distributor, you can set the timing on this car with the motor running, as long as your blade isn't on. Okay, it's like a conventional distributor. You can turn it. It is slotted. Okay, and always adjust with a vacuum gauge. You get right off the port on your intake with a vacuum gauge to get maximum torque, maximum horsepower. All right, we're using 7mm wires, all right, because of the electronic ignition system. And also the looms are set up for 7mm wire. All right. Very easy to just slide right in the tube and you hook them right up. Also, what I explained to you is, well, putting these wires in is a good idea to use some silicone inside the looms. Just spray it in there. As you know, we're putting new spark plug wires on, and it's a universal set is what we're using, okay? And you have to pre-fit the one end. The spark plug end comes already on the wire, but the part that goes into the distributor doesn't. And if you can see that, just a wire, and what I'm going to do is trim it, put the boot on it, and put it in. Okay, now I trim it back. I go back 1/4 inch, so there's enough so I can fold it over like that. Okay, now I put my end on like that, and you fold it over with a pair of pliers and clip it down. Before you cut the wire, make sure you put it up against wherever you're going to run it to be correct. You know, your lengths are correct. Don't use your old wire as a guide. I'm hooking the coil wire up now, which is a special coil that goes with this Mallory ignition system. All right, now we're putting the 12-volt battery back into our system because we converted everything, okay? And don't forget, negative ground. Okay, I got this battery from Ace Auto Parts and all the 12-volt bulbs from Ace Auto Parts. All right, and again, I'm going to remind you again, make sure you're negative ground. It's a good idea when you have your battery out, your battery tray is usually dirty and peeling, clean it off and spray it with some rubberized paint. You can buy that in any auto parts store. Well, now we finished the 12-volt conversion. What about the radio, Vic?
Well, Al, we should check with Forrest Norman on the radio. Why don't you see if you can tune him in right now?
Okay.
Hi, Vic. Yes, what we're going to do to your radio is we're going to replace the 6-volt transformer with a 12-volt transformer. We're going to replace the 6-volt vibrator with a 12-volt negative vibrator, and we're going to series the tubes so they'll be 12-volt tubes. It's going to work great when we get through. Being on 12-volt lends several opportunities. You know, we can also put in a later model radio like this cassette radio, and we can also do a stereo conversion.
Now, Forrest, I understand that you've got radios like the one you just showed us that are made to adapt to the original dashboard, so we don't, if we wanted to upgrade to that type of radio, we would not have to take a hacksaw to the dashboard. Is that right?
That's right, Vic, and that's the reason for these new radios. You don't have to do anything to the dashboard, and they're a little less expensive as a rule than to do a 12-volt conversion. However, we're at the point it's not an original radio.
Now, Forrest, if I wanted to send you a radio for a conversion, or if I wanted to talk to you, or if I wanted to buy a new radio, how do I get in touch with you? And it's true that you do any type of antique automobile radio, not just Ford.
That's right, Vic.
Is there any cutoff here?
Right now, for repairs, it's around 1976. However, we can do stereo conversions to, say, into the 80s, or early 80s.
I have one more question for you. I have a 66 Lincoln Continental convertible that's got the original AM radio in it, but it hasn't worked since about 1976. Is there a way you can repair that one?
Yes, Vic, we can repair your Lincoln. Most of the time, we would recommend putting one of our stereo conversion boards in there. You can't tell that we have a stereo inside your radio.
Well, now in the Lincoln that would work, because that's got a front and rear speaker factory.
Then you're ready for it. You're ready for a stereo.
Great, Forrest. Well, we really appreciate your help, and I can't wait to be jamming to those tunes on my new radio.
Thanks for stopping by, Vic.
I'm here with Al Wiseman, the owner of Classic Corvettes and Collectibles, and I know we're doing a Flathead Ford video, but Al's shop is the finest shop I've seen anywhere in a long time. And I know, Al, that you have a large collection of muscle cars and some really nice antique Packards and stuff. What made you get into selling cars to the public?
Well, I've always enjoyed cars and collected them for 30-some-odd years. And being I was at auctions and had the opportunity to buy estate cars and etc., as we went along in my private collection, I decided why not start a business in doing it, and it would allow me to buy larger packages of estate cars and collections and stuff to call out things I would like from my own private collection, as well as enjoyment of the business and the cars.
Well, I know you invited me to come and see your private collection that one day, and I couldn't make it, but will you give me a rain check?
You betcha.
Okay, and if you get a chance, if you're in Tarpon Springs, Florida, this is a must-see stop. You've got an internet page too, right?
Yes, we're on the web.
You can look them up on the web, and you're in Hemmings Motor News, I
Hemmings
presume?
Motor News, Auto Trader, and several of the trade publications.
Great. Well, Al, through the magic of television, we've been transported to Al's museum. And we're sitting in a 1912 Ford Speedster. And I got to tell you, people must have been a lot thinner back then, because I don't think I'm going to be able to get myself out of this seat.
And a lot smaller.
And a lot smaller. Now, this is one of the earliest cars in the museum, correct?
One of them, yeah, we have earlier. We have go all the way back to 1909.
Now, yeah, that's right, because this is in 1912. And in 1909 is the Speedster that won the
New York to Seattle race.
New York to Seattle in 1909.
In 1909. Right.
Oh, great. Well, we're going to have to take a look at that. You're going to really enjoy this segment. We're going to take a look at some of Al Wiseman's beautiful, beautiful cars.
standing in front of a 1929 sedan delivery called the Fix-It truck. And the bell you heard is when he goes down the street telling people he's coming. You notice the inside is full of antique tools. And there's an egg basket in it. All right? That's how he got paid by some of his people. They didn't have any money, they gave him eggs. We are standing alongside a 1909 Model T limousine. Very rare. Very rare. There's one of 5 left in the world that we know of. I'll show you some of the highlights. This is an umbrella basket. Okay. And then we have the limo part. And you see the white rubber tires, natural rubber. The color of Brill rubber is naturally white. Also, you notice the brass, everything is brass. Okay, it's an early Model T before electric starter. It's a hand crank car. So the chauffeur had to get out and hand crank it.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that quick tour of some of Al Wiseman's beautiful private collection. Right now, we've got the Ford running, and we're going to recap everything that we just did, right, Al?
Yep.
Now, let's talk a little bit about, because we showed the installation with the generator, but when you hook up the generator and you need the 12-volt voltage regulator, the wiring harness that came with the 6-volt is the same one, and you hook it up the same way, right?
Exact same way, and you polarize it the exact same way you do a 6-volt.
Okay, and in the instance of an alternator, you totally eliminate it. So you don't need it at all.
Don't need it at all. Don't
Well,
need
great.
It.
Well, now that we got the car running and we don't have to push it, Al,
Thank goodness.
let's say we take a ride down to the burger joint and celebrate with a couple of vanilla Cokes.
Only one thing. I wish you were a nice-looking blonde. It works every time.
Whoa! You know how much time and money can be involved in a restoration project? That's why it amazes me how some people can restore a car and then not buy proper insurance for it. I don't mean getting insurance from your regular auto policy. I mean buying special insurance from somebody like American Collectors Car Insurance. American Collectors has been insuring antique and classic cars since 1976, and today it's a recognized industry leader. American Collectors has been in business for over 20 years because the coverage its policy provides is simply the best you can buy. Plus, American Collectors rates are extremely competitive. Believe me, I couldn't sleep at night if I knew my collector cars were insured by regular car insurance. So if you want insurance that guarantees the full value of your collector car, and if you want to pay a fraction of your current auto insurance rate, you need to call American Collectors today at 1-800-360-CARS. That's 1-800-360-CARS for more information and a free, no-obligation rate quote. Gee, I hope Al at least brings me back a burger and fries. At this time, I'd like to thank all of the people that provided parts for the making of this video and give you the phone numbers to get in touch with them in case you'd like to perform the same magic on your Ford. Tony DaCosta of Hot Rod and Custom Supply at 941-574-7744. Hemmings Motor News at 1-800-CAR-HERE. That's 1-800-227-4373, extension 550. Patrick Dykes of Patrick's Cars and Trucks at 520-836-1117. Hank Young at Joe Smith Antique Ford and Street Rod Parts at 1-800-235-5333. 4013. Dave Tatum of Tatum Custom Engines and Vintage Vendors. Dave can be reached at 360-424-8314. Ford Parts USA, 1-800-435-5936. Harvey Alexander at Dennis Carpenter Reproduction, 1-800-476-9653. And special thanks to Tay Offenhauser of Offenhauser Industries.
VIX V8 Videos 6 to 12 volt conversion has been brought to you by Ace Auto Parts. Since 1923, hundreds of thousands of customers have come to rely on Ace as a company they can trust. By Patrick's Antique Cars and Trucks, home of classic Fenton cast iron headers and Patrick's Mallory distributors for early flathead V8 Fords. By Joe Smith Antique Ford and Street Rod Parts for 32 to 48 Fords, plus flathead engine building, your source for V8 Ford parts since 1965. And by Hemmings Motor News, the Bible of the collector car hobby since 1954. This has been a feature presentation of VIX V8 Videos.
I learned everything I know about flatheads from VIX V8 Videos.